So this, good readers, is the LibTech Terrain Wrecker 2020. We loved the 2019 and 2018, and that was XC2 or C2X, which is a hybrid rocker profile that has a quick bend in the middle that goes up pretty fast, and then a long camber coming down but not touching the snow or the table in this instance. This is now C2. So this is the 157, just like the old 157 that I gave Jimbo, that he loves. Trying to get Jimbo a little more directional these days, and this is a great fit for him because he rides both directions. And but I wanted to give him a little more surfy directional float when he sets back. Now this is C2, and I can feel it. It's very subtle, but if you look at the on the table review down below in past reviews, you can see how this was a little higher off the table. There was just a little more rocker between the feet and a little longer camber, but it was more loose. This feels like when you weight it down, it's not as loose and spinny. It's just very subtle, and it's still semi-stable, like the Terrain Wrecker, but now it's just a little more on the stable side of semi-stable. And when you weight it down, it's gonna 1 foot a little better, flat base a little better, but it's still going to have all those great qualities that the old Terrain Wrecker had. So let's get into a few things here. You can see this kind of nice, aggressive magnet traction between the feet that really mellows out quickly, so it doesn't grab as much in softer snow as the very old magnet traction from the O's used to. It used to look like a crinkle cut French fry from tip to tail almost, and it was almost scary. It wouldn't let go. They've really mellowed it out. But this is like what I would say modern day, they're full mag. And this is great for hard to icy snow riding. If you're on the East Coast and you want kind of a one board quiver that you can take out west, or when you're out east, you can grip really well. It's loose, but once you get it on edge, there aren't many boards that grip like this. So that's really special. But then when you get powder, you can set it back and get much more directional float than boards, let's say like the TRS. It kind of sits in a nice spectrum. Like the TRS is for those that ride centered, see hard snow and don't really set it back in powder and don't really need a lot of like a board for powder as much. This, you can ride centered. It's not quite as good as the TRS either direction, but it's close. But you can set it back. It's got a much more like directional floaty nose and a much shorter chopped tail, but still kind of that same TRS kind of side cut. So you can center it up. It's got a centered stance, but you just get more directional float, and you can set it further back on board from center. A good bit more, actually. So that combination makes this a great all-mountain board, meaning one board quiver. You can do a little bit of the free ride thing, do a little bit of the mountain freestyle thing. So it kind of sits like TRS is here, Terrain Wrecker here, then boards like the LibTech Bird and like sits way over here, and kind of in between from the Mervin family, Mervin meaning LibTech and GNU, is the Hypercarve, which takes this and just puts it in a little more directional, a little like it's got some taper to it, it's a little more free ride. So that's kind of the spectrum and how all these boards sit. And this kind of sits in the middle for those who just want to do a little bit of everything. You want to hit the park, you want to set it back and ride powder, you want to ride the mountain in kind of a freestyle way. That's that. Let's get into the width, because this comes a little wider, and which is interesting. I thought this waist width would have been difficult to turn. Wasn't. It turned like just as fast as the TRS, maybe even faster. And I have size 9 boots, and that's just so weird. So don't be too turned off with the regular sizes, or if you're a mid-wide and you see the pretty wide waist widths, don't be that turned off about it not working with your boot, like with a little bit smaller boot than you would normally go for that waist width. But as you can see here, people are asking me to measure over the bindings. You're looking at about 26.4, 26.5, somewhere around there. And then just about 27.1, 27.2. And it should be about the same, actually a little less, 26.3, 26.4, kind of around there. And yeah, about 27.1, 27.2. Let me double check. Nope, they're the same. About 26.3, 26.4, and about 27. Yep, so they're just about the same, which is good. But then, if you want to set it all the way back with traditional disc bindings, you're looking at a 22.5 inches, which is pretty good. Like I can slide this one in a little bit, slide this, and I'll get closer to like what I like these days is more like around 22. But 22.5 is very doable. And with that, you can get a difference between nose to the back end, to this furthest back insert on the front, and tail to the furthest back insert on the back of 3.5 inches, which is pretty good for an all mountain board. Kind of like average above average, you know, which I like. And then the setback from center of board is about 1.75 inches. That's a good bit more than the TRS and a good bit less than the Hypercarve. But it makes for an easy floater. And you can just see again, you know, this isn't tapered, but they've definitely made the nose and tail feel more directional in powder. On groomers, it doesn't feel as directional because you're on this side cut. But when it gets into powder, this tail sinks a little easier. This nose rises a lot easier than the TRS. So definitely the all-mountain choice over the TRS. And then you got this base here, black, mostly black, little blue highlight, little blue pop. And the die cut is exceptional. It almost doesn't feel like it's die cut. You can just barely feel it with your fingernail. And the base has, you know, good glide to it. Not amazing, but definitely above average. And the lows are not that low when you don't wax it. And the highs are not super high when you do, but it's always got that more consistent feel for people who don't wax every day or every other day and don't like try to guess the weather the next day and put in a perfect wax for that temperature, that kind of stuff. If you're just gonna all temp this every, you know, whenever you choose, this is gonna glide a lot better than a lot of boards that might have a higher end base that, you know, they're high maintenance. They need to be waxed every couple days, and they need the right kind of wax for the right kind of temperature. A lot of them do. Some can be like this too, but it's got good glide to it. So all in all, you know, the added stability of the train wrecker helps. It's just a touch, and wood cores, you know, cure differently from board to board. So yours might have C3 that looks more like this, you know. Some of you might have one that rises higher, but overall it seems like it's a little more lower to the ground, a little more stable than the old terrain wrecker that had that more aggressive rocker underfoot. This is kind of a little bit more on the side of the camber profile of the old TRS when it was C2, or the T-Rice board that's C2 now. And the T-Rice, you know, blunt and pointy, the old Pro model, the True Twin. This has a little bit more of that camber profile. It's a little bit more on the stable side of semi-stable. So there you have it. That's the Terrain Wrecker 2020.